Today I dressed elegant so that I could look smart. Hope you appreciate. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I learned German in 6 months. So I went from knowing just the basics, just a few words, a few expressions, the numbers, the colors, how to introduce myself and saying things like my name and how old I am and things like that, to actually have a proper conversation with someone. Either it was formal or informal, so small talk or maybe a job interview. Then I was able in 6 months to read and write formal letters, to comprehend podcasts, videos, TV shows, to read books, and understand in general, the German language. So I will tell you all the resources and the things that I used to just learn this language in such a little time. And I know German is a pretty difficult language. But the first thing that I would like to say is that you have to have motivation. When you focus on the motivation and the reason why you're doing this, you're learning a new language or German in particular, then it becomes easier to stay focused. My advice would be to have a schedule, and so to tell yourself, okay, so this is what I'm going to do and how much per day. I would recommend to be consistent and to do that almost every day. That's what I did. And then just to change the method. Do not always use the same book and the same, podcast or whatever. Change the way you study the language, otherwise it will be so boring and you will lose motivation. So first of all, I was a little bit overwhelmed and I was like, I don't know, I have to learn the language in such a short period of time and I want something that really helps me and introduces me to the language. So I found this on internet. Can you see it? So this is a book which contains the most important, grammar rules and expressions and things about German from the level A1 to B2. For those who are not familiar with studying a foreign language, when you study any kind of language, every language has levels. A1 and A2 would be the basic levels, so you know a little bit about the language, but you cannot actually have a proper conversation. B1 and B2, you're good. You're getting really good at the language. C1 and C2, you are advanced and proficient. Here I had an introduction to everything, and there are a lot of dialogues, and then they are translated in my language. My mother language is Italian. Hi, I'm Italian. And there are just a few exercises each chapter. I finished this in a month and a half. It is a really long book. It has 600 pages. So yeah. So I don't know if there's some kind of version in your language and then, so your native language and German, but they have several books like this, like for example, Italian to English, Spanish to German. So they're really mixed up. So maybe you will find what is, the perfect book for you. And when I got used a little bit to the language, then I switched to harder books. So the harder books that I used are the grammar ones. So I bought one that it was in Italian, so Italian and German. I didn't finish it all, but there are a lot of grammar rules. It is complicated, but it helped me to understand a little bit more about the logic of the language. Then I have all of these books that are typical books that you use at school. Some of them were recommended by the school I went to. It was really good that I could, participate in these group lessons. So they are quite expensive. That's why I bought at the beginning this one, because I was like, I'm not gonna take lessons to learn, the first levels of German so that I could reach those levels, A1, A2, because I'm just gonna spend a couple of thousands francs. It was not worth it, and it was such a huge amount of money. So I was like, I'm just gonna reach the first levels by myself, but it was hard, definitely. And then I enrolled, so I participated to this B1 class, and sometimes it was hard, sometimes it was not. It was easier. I mean, it was fun also because we did a lot of group activities and stuff like that, and I finished that, and it was an intensive course. So really every day and in a month, and I improved a lot. Then I started working, and so that actually helped a little bit, but I still felt lost. So I had to keep studying the language at home. So I bought, other books, and I started doing everything by my own. Then I enrolled myself in another course, and I took those lessons, but then Corona came, and so I had to keep doing everything online, and I had just a few private lessons, and that helped a lot, but I did everything at home. So I studied a lot, and then I just asked questions about things that I didn't know, because the only way to save money when you want to learn something is to study everything by yourself. Just write down the questions you have. Once you've noticed that you don't understand something, you can just ask, but not that you have to go through every single chapter with a teacher, because it's too expensive. I have like a list of things so that I don't forget something. Of course, I use those, really famous language apps. For example, Duolingo, Reverso, Puzu. It's a good method when you approach the language for the first couple of months, but then it becomes too boring because you're not actually improving that much. You're kind of repeating the same things. I really wanted to stop doing that, and I use the apps not that often. And what helped me a lot are the books that I read and Netflix. So these little books are, for example, stories that are known. Wellen, Frankenstein, Die Verwandlung, written by Kafka. So they are famous books. So you already know a little bit, the story. It's easier, and they are written for people that are learning the language. I really loved the criminal books. They are about, there's, for example, a murder, and then there's a detective. It's really interesting. And these are a little bit bigger books with more pages, and the level is higher. And then I switched to the normal books, books that everybody would read. It is not like learning the language, just for fun and for interest. And the books that I read are gegen, Nordwind, and then the second book. So there's a sequel. And it was harder, of course, because there were a lot of new words that I didn't know. But when you read a book, you improve your vocabulary and you become really good. Like, your level goes from just talking like a child to talking like a professor. Netflix, I really recommend to watch shows that you've already watched and just switch the language. So I watched The Vampire Diaries and Gossip Girl, which I'm still watching, in German, because I already knew the stories. Just find those shows that are not too complicated, and then you can switch to more complicated shows. For example, I watched Dark. Dark is such an amazing TV show, but it's really hard. I mean, it talks about philosophy, time travel. It's not easy, but it was really interesting, and I watched it with subtitles. At the beginning, I watched everything with subtitles, and then I removed the subtitles and I could understand everything. And that's the best feeling, because you feel like, oh, I'm finally improving because I do understand what's going on. What I also wrote down is use the language in all-day situation. So you have to go to a post office, or you have to go there to the bank, and you just have to talk the language and try. Even if people tell you, oh, would you like to talk in English, just avoid that. Just try to use the language, unless it's something really difficult and it's important that you understand. But if it's just, at the post office or in the grocery store or the library, just use the language. So in all day situation, at the phone, whatever, I try to speak German, even if I made a lot of mistakes and I sounded terrible and people were making probably fun of me. But you just have to, get out of your comfort zone. So I make mistakes, but at least I can have a conversation with people, because at least I try to talk, and I think that people appreciate that. Even if I make mistake, they appreciate the fact that I'm just trying to, have a conversation with them, and I'm not isolating myself and being like, oh, I don't understand you guys, I'm just gonna sit in a corner and cry. Don't do that. So, of course, you have to use all of the resources that you find on the internet or books or whatever, because, guys, there are so many resources and chances and things that you can use today. Back in the 90s, early 2000s, people were struggling to learn a language, and they actually had to use, books to translate the words. And now we have just those apps. You just give a word and in a few seconds you already have the translation. So you don't even have to be that patient. You already have everything. So you're just lazy if you're not improving. If you stop studying the language for a few weeks, a few months, you'll forget about it. So I'm not saying that every day you have to study hours and hours like I did, but you have to stay focused and you have to keep studying. I, of course, lost motivation a lot. I felt like I was going back instead of forward. I was like making more mistakes, and I felt like I was studying too much and I was not achieving anything. I was like, why am I making so many mistakes and I'm not improving? The problem is that in a new language, you have to learn so much, and so you will make so many mistakes and you'll feel unmotivated. But it's okay. Then everything comes. You reach a point in which you are only improving. Like I'm at this point, but it took me several months to get to this point. I think that the answer to the famous question, how did I learn German in 6 months, is that I didn't give up. I kept studying, I kept learning, and I had motivation, and that is what made me learn the language in such a short period of time. I'm still learning the language. What I mean is that in 6 months, I went from knowing nothing to having a really good level, like B2 level or even a little bit more, you know. So I would like to end the video with a quote that I love from Charlemagne, and it says, to have a second language is to have a second soul. And also I would like to ask you, if you want, you can subscribe to my channel and to leave a comment if you want. You can give it a like, you know, a thumbs up. You can hit the bell notification so that you won't miss any of my videos. I hate to say that part, but I had to. Thank you. If you have questions about the language and how I learned, like really, if you want to know details about how I learned the language and also maybe the other languages, you can just ask, because I just gave you like an overall explanation, but there is more behind my process to learn German and all the languages that I already speak. So you can ask whatever you want. So yeah, thank you for watching and bye. Ciao.